Of course, here's a rewritten version of your scene, keeping the power and tension while sharpening the narrative flow. The courtroom was silent, but the tension roared. Inside a sleek glass-paneled hall at The Hague, the Emergency International Tribunal convened under global scrutiny. Unusually, the U.S. Supreme Court justices sat among the panel, called in for what was framed as a routine legal clarification on refugee protocols. Cameras rolled. News tickers flashed headlines. Few expected anything significant. Fewer still expected him. Then, Captain Ibrahim Traoré entered. He arrived alone. No lawyers, no towering stacks of documents, just a small black notebook tucked under his arm. He wore no military uniform, only a crisp white shirt, sleeves casually rolled to his forearms. Composed. The moderator nodded politely. "Captain Traoré," she said, "you may proceed." He stood still. 5 long seconds. The room waited. Then, softly, he opened his notebook. "This is not a refugee case," he began. "This is a question of dignity and how easily the world forgets African pain." The atmosphere tightened. A few judges leaned forward. One scoffed, but Traoré didn't flinch. He wasn't here to ask for sympathy. He was here to expose what the world had chosen not to see. From his pocket, he drew a photograph, worn, creased, handled many times. He held it up. "This," he said softly, "was taken last year. Niger the Sahel." On the photo, 5 barefoot children stood on parched earth, their faces hollow from exhaustion. They walked 93 kilometers after their village was burned. 93. When they arrived at the nearest refugee center, they found it closed. There was no room, no papers, no legal status. His voice trembled, but only for a moment. 2 of them died the next morning. The baby, her name was A, died in her sister's arms. A soft gasp escaped from the moderator's chair. "But I'm not here to make you feel guilty," Traoré continued, steady now. "I am here to ask, would this decision be the same if it were 5 American children lost in the desert?" The room froze. The live stream chat exploded. "Who is this man? This just got real. I'm crying already." Captain Traoré wasn't finished. He turned the photo around. Written in faded blue ink on the back were 5 names. Below them, "Tell the world we were here." Justice Halbrand, one of the court's most unyielding conservative voices, sat like stone. Known for never blinking during hearings, his jaw now tensed. Traoré looked directly at him. "Justice Halbrand," he said, quiet but piercing, "your ruling 2 months ago concluded that undocumented migrants from West Africa presented a manageable humanitarian issue, not a legal priority." The words hung in the air like smoke. "May I ask, what makes pain manageable to you?" The question landed like a blow. A ripple moved through the courtroom. Halbrand stiffened. "You saw numbers," Traoré said, stepping closer. "I saw funerals. You saw illegality. I saw children burying their mothers with bare hands." Gently, he placed the photograph on the table before Halbrand. The judge didn't move. The moderator shifted, voice uneasy. "Captain, please, I'm not angry," Traoré interrupted, his voice cracking. "I'm exhausted. Because we come asking for humanity, and you give us categories." For the first time, Halbrand blinked. His eyes shimmered. A journalist tweeted, "This is no longer a legal hearing. This is a soul hearing, and the whole world is watching." The screen behind Traoré flickered to life. Slide 1. A barren refugee camp beneath a pale sky. Slide 2. A small child kneeling beside a broken water jug. Slide 3. A mother clutching her baby as armed soldiers marched past. "This," Traoré said, gesturing to the screen, "is Maria Majidumbia, 7 years old, Gambian, declared stateless by your ruling. She died crossing a river into Senegal 3 weeks ago." He paused, breathed. "Did you even see her name in the files you stamped?" One judge lowered his head. The moderator looked away. The cameras zoomed in. "Do you know," Traoré whispered what her last words were, "would you like me to continue from here, or would you like a few alternate versions? For example, even more cinematic, more legal drama style, more emotional, more political thriller tone. Just tell me which direction you want." "Absolutely. Here's a rewritten, sharpened version of your next sequence. Preserving the emotional weight, tightening the rhythm, and making it even more cinematic. Will I be allowed to go to school in Senegal?" Traoré gripped the podium. The voice didn't rise, but it trembled. "She was 7, he whispered. "She thought the law would help her." He tapped his chest, his hand briefly trembling. "She didn't know the law wasn't written for children like her." The courtroom was frozen. No whispers, no coughs, only one sound. Justice Halbrand setting his pen down, and in the far corner, a single tear rolling down the cheek of the translator. The world was watching, but for the first time, it was listening. "This wasn't in the official documents," Traoré continued. "It wasn't supposed to be seen, but I have it." He raised a folded, yellowed letter for the cameras to see. A handwritten note from a deported refugee, smuggled out by a Red Cross worker, hidden inside a used book. He carefully unfolded it. "To the people who decided I shouldn't be here," he read aloud, "I hope one day someone explains to you how it feels to beg for air, for food, and still be seen as a problem. I hope you never see your mother sold for a border pass. I'm not angry. I just want to know, what did we do so wrong? that being born African means being denied safety. The camera panned across the judges. Stone-faced one leaned back slowly, averting his gaze from the screen. The moderator wiped her eyes, opened her mouth, and couldn't speak. "This letter," Traoré said softly, "is not a speech. It's a testimony." He lifted his eyes, and this court, his voice steady now, is on trial. The livestream chat lit up in real time. "I'm sobbing. This feels too real." He's not just speaking, he's lifting the dead. Traoré's voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you know how many African refugees have died since your ruling?" Silence. 3,082, he said. "That we know of." The number shot through the room like a bullet. He laid a printed list on the table. "Names, dates, ages. This," he said, "is the law. You defend a law that hears no screams, that demands paperwork while children drown." The mood shifted. Law and policy gave way to something heavier. Shame. An African delegate clenched his fists under the desk. Another quietly dabbed her eyes with a tissue. "I understand," Traoré continued, "that the law must be neutral. But when neutrality helps bury the voiceless, it becomes cruelty." He paused. "And cruelty, however legal, is still evil." The chat exploded again. "I've never cried watching politics before. This is a revolution happening live. Please, someone, listen to this man." Then for the first time, Justice Halburn leaned forward. "Captain Traoré," he said quietly, "what do you propose we do?" Gasps rippled through the chamber. The world held its breath. Traoré inhaled deeply. The screen flickered again. A new image appeared. A young girl in a faded blue dress, barefoot, eyes wide, dust swirling around her. "Her name was Kada," he whispered. "She was 14. She made it as far as a refugee camp in Tunisia. She begged for safety, but your ruling had already closed the pathway." His voice wavered. 2 days later, she was found inside a shipping container, trying to reach Italy." A quiet sob swept through the room. "No one talks about her because she didn't make it. But if this hearing is truly about justice, then her voice must be heard too." Traoré stepped forward, placed a printed page on the bench. "Kada's final diary entry." He read softly. "If I die, please let someone know I tried to live." The moderator's lips trembled. An African delegate removed her glasses, wiping her eyes. "Your Honors," Traoré said, turning to the judges, voice steady but breaking at the edges. "How many more will try just to be treated as human?" The courtroom was no longer a court. It had become a graveyard of truth. Then a soft chime, not a phone, a secure line from the UN Secretary General's office. The moderator answered quietly, a whisper in her ear. Her eyes widened. She stood. "Captain Traoré," she said, voice tight, "the Secretary General has requested that you continue your testimony uninterrupted." The room gasped. This was no longer just a hearing. It had become a global moment. Traoré nodded slowly. Then he opened a brown envelope. "Easies," he said, spreading photographs across the bench. "Are classified images from a recent rescue on the Niger border." The camera zoomed in. A boy with a missing leg. A young mother holding her lifeless child. Children hungry, injured, turned away because of their legal status. "We didn't come here for sympathy," Traoré said. "We came to remind you that every paper you sign writes a future for someone who never gets to sit in this room." Silence. Justice Halburn had said nothing for some time, known for his icy composure. For 30 years he had shown no emotion on the bench, but now as Traoré gently laid down the final photo, showing a burial site marked by 20 tiny graves, something cracked. "Would you like me to continue from here? Or I can also prepare the final breakdown moment where Halburn and the court finally snap that crucial climax. Shall I?" Here's a rewritten, sharpened version of this next powerful segment, keeping the emotional charge but tightening the pacing for maximum impact. His pen dropped. "Captain," Justice Halburn said softly, voice barely audible, "what would you have us do?" Traoré stepped closer. "Rewrite the ruling," he said. "Acknowledge that desperation is not a crime. Make refugee safety a human right, not a paperwork privilege." A single tear traced down Halburn's cheek. "I've never seen it like this," he whispered. Traoré nodded. "That's the problem, Your Honor. The world never sees us until we are dead." A pause. "But you can choose to change that today." The live stream erupted across the globe. "I can't stop crying. This is history unfolding. He's speaking for millions of voiceless souls." The moderator glanced down at her tablet. Over 23 million people were now watching and climbing. What had begun as a routine legal proceeding had become a global reckoning. And Traoré wasn't he? Finished. Just as the court prepared to call for recess, a quiet voice broke the tension. "Your Honors, I was there." All eyes turned. A young man stood at the back of the gallery. His voice shook, but his gaze was steady. Around his neck hung a refugee camp badge. Security began to move toward him. "Let him speak," Traoré said, raising a calming hand. The room froze. His name was Daniel Ake, 19 years old, Ethiopian, one of the few who survived the Mediterranean crossing. "I saw babies in the water," Daniel said, voice breaking. "I helped bury 5 people. 2 of them were girls my age." His hands trembled as he held up a photograph. His sister Marin smiling beside him before they left Addis Ababa. She didn't make it. The courtroom was utterly silent. Daniel turned toward the bench. I'm not asking for your sympathy. I'm asking you to stop making decisions that kill people like my sister. The moderator's voice cracked as she tried to call for order, but it was too late. The moment had already pierced the world. Traoré gently placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. This court has just heard the most honest testimony in its history, he said softly, and across the globe, millions watching online wept with them. Then Traoré stepped forward again, holding something new, a sealed brown envelope. He lifted it for the court and the cameras. This was not meant for your eyes, he said, but the world has the right to see it. He carefully pulled out a classified memo, marked confidential, a diplomatic cable from a Western ambassador to their home government. Subject: refugee overflow strategy. Traoré read aloud. If refugee crossings remain high, we may permit stricter rejections via legal loopholes, particularly for African nationals. Their governments are less likely to mount legal opposition. The silence inside the courtroom was suffocating. You knew, Traoré said. You all knew this policy wasn't based on law. It was based on the assumption that no one would stand up for Africa. He turned toward the camera's, eyes burning. You assumed wrong. Justice Halburn flinched. The moderator covered her mouth in disbelief. The live stream exploded again. This feels like a movie, but it's real. Systemic racism exposed live on air. He's risking everything for the forgotten dot. One judge leaned to another and whispered, we're losing control. They weren't losing control. They were losing the moral ground beneath their feet. And Traoré, too, is setting it ablaze. He paused, looked into the audience, into the cameras. I want to show you something. Traoré bent down and opened a small black box. Inside, a tiny pair of mud-caked baby shoes. These belonged to a 1-year-old boy named Fidel, he said softly. His mother carried him across the desert. He died of dehydration, 20 kilometers from a safe zone. He held up the shoes, his voice breaking now. Do you know what broke me? It wasn't that he died. It was that his mother kept carrying these shoes long after he was gone because she couldn't let go. Because she believed somehow that someone in this world would care. A single sob echoed across the courtroom. Traoré looked directly at the bench. Will you prove her right? He asked, voice shaking. Or will you prove her worst fear true? The moderator stood frozen. One judge, unable to look any longer, lowered his head. Shall I continue building the next segment? This is leading toward a global breaking point where the entire world turns its eyes fully on the court. The emotional crescendo is near. Here's a polished rewrite of this emotional climax, preserving its raw power while refining the pacing and impact. He broke down quietly, tears streaming down his cheeks. Outside the court, thousands had gathered. Some knelt in silence, others held placards high. And inside millions of living rooms, classrooms, and phones, people wept. This was no longer about policy. This was about humanity itself. And Captain Ibrahim Traoré was giving it back, one painful truth at a time. Justice Eleanor Quinn, a respected titan of international law, had remained silent all day. She had watched every testimony, every photo, every word, but as Traoré held up Fidel's tiny shoes, something inside her finally cracked. Captain, she said suddenly, voice trembling but steady, do you believe we ever cared? The room snapped toward her. Do you believe, she continued, hand shaking, that we, this system, ever intended to save lives like his? Traoré stepped forward. He didn't shout, he didn't accuse. He simply said, not once, not until today. Justice Quinn lowered her gaze. Silent tears dropped onto the bench. The moderator, stunned, paused the session. Cameras caught everything. A wave of emotion rippled across the internet. A judge just broke down. This is history. He's not just speaking, he's healing wounds. We didn't know we carried dot outside. The candlelight vigil grew. People lit flames for Fidel, for Wayne, for all the invisible children. The court wasn't just listening anymore. It was beginning to feel. During a brief recess, Traoré stepped into a private room. His phone buzzed with hundreds of missed calls, but one number stood out, a Ghanaian country code. He hesitated, then answered. Hello, a fragile voice spoke. Is this Captain Traoré? I saw my son's face on your screen. He sat up straight. Your name? Ma'am, Asaba Owusu, my son Wayne. He was on one of the boats that sank near Lampedusa. I never saw him again. Traoré's throat tightened. I remember Wayne wore a red scarf. The Coast Guards found it. Silence. Then sobs. They told me no one cared, she whispered, but today I heard my boy's name in your mouth, and for the first time it felt like he lived again. His eyes welled up. He does, ma'am. Every story I tell is for children like him. Then don't stop, she said. Please keep speaking. When Traoré returned to the courtroom, something had shifted inside him, more grounded, more urgent, more human. He stepped back to the podium and looked into the camera. For Wayma, every mother still waiting. This is no longer testimony. This is a cry for justice. As the next session began, an unusual sound rose from outside. Not shouting, singing. Thousands gathered outside the International Tribunal weren't chanting slogans anymore. They were singing a West African lullaby. Live drone footage captured the sea of candles, faces lit by phone screens, and a massive banner stretched across the courthouse wall. Dignity for all refugees is inside. The moderator paused to acknowledge it. The whole world was watching now. Traoré turned to the judges. You may forget their names, but the world now knows them. The camera panned to Justice Halburn, once the fiercest defender of the court's neutrality. His jaw clenched, his notes trembled. Finally, he spoke. What do you want from us? Traoré's voice was steady, not mercy, not pity. Just a ruling that remembers, we are all human. At that moment, the door creaked open. A small girl entered. She walked quietly to the table and placed a folded drawing, a sun, a boat, a smiling family. She didn't speak. Her silence screamed. She was one of the survivors, and now even the court couldn't pretend not to see her. Hours passed. The judges returned from deliberation. Justice Quinn spoke, voice heavy with emotion. We have reached a decision. For decades, this court has turned its face away from the cries of the vulnerable. Would you like me to continue writing the verdict? This is where we reach the full emotional crescendo, the judgment that could change the world. Here's a polished rewrite of your powerful ending, keeping the emotional gravity while elevating the pacing and clarity. The room leaned forward, hanging on every word. But today, Justice Quinn said, her voice cracking because of truth, and because of Captain Traoré, we can no longer pretend ignorance. She paused, then declared, the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling denying protections to African refugees is hereby condemned in this court of global conscience. Gasps filled the chamber. Effective immediately, she continued, we call for the reversal of asylum bans, the investigation of discriminatory policies, and the creation of an African Refugee Justice Fund, to be led by Captain Ibrahim Traoré. The courtroom erupted. Camera flashes lit up the chamber. Reporters scrambled to file breaking reports. Traoré stood frozen for a moment. This wasn't symbolic. This was real change. Outside, the crowd roared. In Burkina Faso, church bells rang. In Kenya, schools paused class to announce the ruling. In a refugee camp in Libya, a young girl named Zara, watching on a shared phone, whispered, we matter now. And for the first time, across nations, across borders, it felt true. After the verdict, Traoré was asked if he had anything left to say. He nodded. He stepped forward, slowly, scanning the faces before him, then turned to face the cameras. This isn't about winning, he said softly. This is about being seen. He held up a worn photograph, the same image of little Fidel, clutching his sister's hand, the boy who drowned. He was 7. He dreamed of becoming a pilot. His only crime was dreaming in the wrong place. He paused. We are not asking the world to save us. We are asking the world to stop stepping on us. The courtroom fell silent as tears streamed down faces, reporters, translators, even the guards. I speak not only for Burkina Faso, I speak for every child the sea has swallowed, for every mother who kissed her child goodbye at a border and never saw them again. He inhaled deeply. Justice isn't what you write on paper. It's what you do when no one is watching. He looked directly into the lens, but today, everyone is watching. That one line echoed across the world. Within 48 hours, the video reached 74 million views in 49 countries. History remembered every second. As Traoré walked down the courthouse steps, a small figure broke through the crowd. It was the little girl who had placed her drawing on the courtroom table, Samira, a refugee alone in Europe. She ran to him, out of breath. Why, you made them listen, she whispered. And then, without warning, she threw her arms around him, holding him tight. Cameras captured it. The hug, the emotion, the innocence. The image spread everywhere. CNN, the hug that broke the internet. BBC, Captain Traoré didn't just speak, he healed. Al Jazeera, this hug did what no headline could. It made the pain real, the healing visible, and the world unable to look away. And then, across every platform, a simple message appeared. Dear viewer, if this story moved your heart, if your eyes filled with tears, if, even for a moment, you saw the humanity in every child like Fidel or Samira, please like this video. Comment, even just to so the world knows you are watching. Subscribe, because we will keep telling the stories others try to silence. Let's not just go viral, let's go human. Thank you for being part of this moment. Justice only happens when someone refuses to stay silent. Would you like me to now generate a final version of the full scene as a cohesive script? It would flow smoothly as one powerful courtroom drama climax, perfect for a screenplay or novel.